Hello, I'm going to tell you the story of Little Red Riding Hood today. Once there was a girl. She dressed in all red. Her name was Little Red Riding Hood. She had no fashion sense. Her mother told her to go on a journey to grandmother's house, though it was far away, and she sent her with food. Because back then, you traveled many miles alone as a child. Because there was a different time back then. You trusted your children. They trusted their neighbors. And oftentimes, children got eaten by animals, by people, by bandits. And they got kidnapped and raped. So she went out on this journey many miles to grandmother's house, and she ran into a wolf. This was the big bad wolf. Same one from the Three Little Pigs last week. He looked at her and he said, "Red," because he knew her name for some reason, or just guessed her name because she was wearing all red. And he said, "Red, where are you going?" And she said, "To grandmother's house," because she can talk to wolves and the wolf can understand her and the wolf can talk and she can talk to him, because this is a fairy tale, and in fairy tales everyone can understand each other for some reason. Doesn't make sense to me? Don't ask. And she says, "I'm going to my grandmother's house with this food." And the wolf's like, "Well, I'm hungry, give me some food." She's like, "No, it's grandma's food." And the wolf's like, "Well, grandma can make more food." And Little Red Riding Hood's like, "Well, yeah, but this is grandma's food." So they argue for a few minutes back and forth on whose food it should be. And Little Red Riding Hood wins because the wolf doesn't feel like eating her. He feels like the fried chicken in her basket. And wolves can't technically fry anything because they don't have hands. They've got paws. So the wolf comes up with a plan to go to grandmother's house before Little Red Riding Hood does. So he sneaks away and runs to grandmother's house, because wolves are faster than people, and knocks on the door. And grandma's like, "Come in," because grandma's in the shower. And the wolf comes in, sneaks up behind grandma, and it's like a scene from Psycho, only he grabs a heavy object and he bashes her on the back of the head. And the wolf is scarred for life from seeing grandma naked. So he never gets an erection again. Which, it doesn't really matter, because he doesn't live that long after this anyways. Just spoiler alert there. So he eats her, and then he dresses up like her and lays in bed waiting for Little Red Riding Hood. Well, a few hours later, Little Red Riding Hood comes knocking on the door, and the wolf says, "Come in." And Little Red Riding Hood comes in, and the wolf's plan is to eat the food, maybe eat Little Red Riding Hood, and get away with it all. Simple plan, but let's see how it works out. So the wolf says, "Come in." Little Red Riding Hood comes in, and she's like, "Grandma, what big teeth you have." And the wolf's like, "All the better to smile with." And she's like, "What big eyes you have." And he's like, "All the better to see you with." And she's like, "What a big nose you have." Now clearly she has seen her grandmother before, and she'll be able to tell this is not her grandmother. But apparently her grandmother is naturally a very ugly woman. I'm guessing her grandmother's Jewish, which is a very racist thing for me to say, but maybe her grandmother's not Jewish. Maybe her grandmother's just a really, really ugly woman. And she's naturally got big eyes and a big nose and big teeth. And her grandmother's just really, really ugly. And so she can't tell it's the wolf. Her grandmother's just hairy and ugly. So maybe Eastern European. Maybe this all happens in like Russia. Those women are hairy and ugly when they get old. So maybe this all happens in like Russia, where you can't tell a wolf from an old lady. So then the wolf pounces on Red Riding Hood and is about to eat her, when all of a sudden the woodsman comes in. Now the woodsman is never really explained in the story, so I'm just gonna make him up. That he's just this random person who's coming by and hears these screams and has an axe. And he runs in and sees the wolf about to eat Little Red Riding Hood, so he disembowels the real wolf. And out pops Grandma, half digested and dead. And Little Red Riding Hood screams again because her grandma is now dead and rotting and, well, not really rotting. She's half digested, which means she's missing body parts, and she's got holes in her, and she's covered in stomach acid, and it's really disgusting to describe. You ever throw up something and you can still see bits and pieces of it? That's how Grandma is. So Red screams, the woodsman leaves, and that's the end of the story. We never find out what happens to Red Riding Hood. We assume she goes home and says Grandma's dead, she was eaten by a wolf, woodsman cut her out, and Grandma died. That's the end of Little Red Riding Hood.